Here we are. Hello. Hi, Deborah and Lou. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Yep.
Good. Well, I'm so happy to see you. I'm really, really glad that both of you could be here because I just think there are a lot of things going on with the Indigenous community that I think people need to know about. So I'm really glad you're here. And the first thing I would love to do is have each of you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about the work that you do and let people know who you are.
You want to go first, Luhui?
You can go first.
Because I just think that.
Hey, my name is Deborah Shipman, Deborah Maytubee Shipman. I'm with the Chickasaw Nation of Oklahoma, but I also carry the blood of the Cherokee and the Choctaw. And I'm the director of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women USA. Of course, we look for women. Our main focus has become over the last 6 years the family themselves. And we work really closely with that and with each state.
Awesome.
Hi everyone, my name is Luhui Whitebear. I use she, her pronouns. I'm Coastal Band Shumash, and I do a lot of different things in the community. I'm really honored to work with Deborah when I can and the students that I support at the Native American Longhouse Senior House at OSU as well, in helping raise local and awareness on these issues. And I know that there's been some community-based materials that I've helped work on that Melissa's going to drop in the chat, I believe, or we'll put in later to help spread the word as well. We were just talking about this primer that I worked on a couple years ago for the MMIW Awareness Day in Portland. So that's basically what I'll say for now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for the work that you do and for being so amazing and inspiring and awesome. So this whole conversation came about because Lou posted on her Facebook page some screenshots. You know how we on Facebook, for those of you that are watching, always get these, you know, ads, these Facebook ads, and they take the things that we talk about and are most important to us and put them on t-shirts and say, buy this now. And what Lou was highlighting was the fact that they were taking this very serious issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and creating logos on t-shirts and trying to sell them for capitalistic gain, which is a bunch of horse shit, quite frankly. So, Lou, will you talk a little bit about that, and Deborah, and talk about why this is really problematic on a number of levels?
Right. So, not only do they often use stolen art for their designs, so that's one of the main issues for these pages. They've done it with not just MMIW, but all kinds of issues. You see them doing it even with Black Lives Matter right now. They did it with Standing Rock, where they actually used the tribe's official logo to try to sell these shirts for people. And so seeing, and that was infuriating. I'm always commenting on those and getting kicked off their pages constantly, but I still see their ads, of course, because they're paid ads. So it's always still on there, even though I'm blocked from commenting on most of their pages now. But it's at least a few people, is my hope, that when you comment on there and say, like, this isn't a real company, they're making money basically off of genocide, and they're making money off the blood of all these people that have been murdered and that are still missing. They're exploiting the families, and they're doing it for monetary gain, which is infuriating to me. I'm not the biggest fan of capitalism as it is. Everybody that knows me knows that. But for them to capitalize on this serious issue is just really upsetting. And so this is the latest iteration we're seeing with these ads on Facebook. And that funding goes directly to somebody else. It does not help the families. It does not help MMIW USA or any other search advocates work going on, and that funding could be donated instead to the families that need it for these search efforts, or for funerary expenses, or for other things that are needed to keep this organization going. And it's just horrible. And so I'll pause there. And there's some other components based on like within our own communities that I'd like to talk about later. But as far as the Facebook ads, I'll pause on that and pass it over to Deborah. And that's also why I wore this shirt today, is like, this is actually one, you can find it on mmiwusa.org. And the funding from shirts like this go directly to the work that Deborah and other folk are doing on the ground grassroots work for the families. And I'll stop there for now.
I want to, Deb, before you respond, I want to highlight something that I think is really important that you just said, Lou, and that is this idea about where we put our money, right? And so I think so often we assume, oh, if I buy this t-shirt, I'm going to be supporting the work of MMIWUSA or other nonprofits that may appear in these Facebook ads. And the exact opposite is true. You know, we're in fact sending our money to some place that probably isn't even in the country, you know, for people's capitalistic gain, and that's it. And I think that is a really important thing for people to recognize when we're talking about shopping with our dollars, and where we intentionally put our money as activists and people who are trying to be aware of issues of justice and colonialization and all of these other issues that we have to be paying attention to moving forward, especially because of where we're at as a country. So Deb, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. Yeah, this most recent thing that kind of like came out of nowhere, and it was surprising. It was shocking that someone would even attempt to market MMIW. And as Luhui said, we're gonna like speak to some of the things that within our own community, you know, attribute to this, you know, capitalism and stuff. But like these people that were like, I'm banned on all of them now too, you know, so are a lot of people within our organization and stuff. And like, I mean, it, to me, it's that fathomable that that somebody can do this and have you know, I mean, just because that we work with so many families who can't even afford to bury their own child, you know, or pay their own gas bill because they buried their child, you know. I mean, it's like, and I don't know, it's like when it, to me, it's not just because that I am in this movement, but it's unbelievable. It is just unconscionable that somebody could do that. And they lifted like over half of one of our logos, and it's like my son's getting that prepared. And we didn't we've got a pro bono lawyer out of Seattle who is going to do this, and he said yes, they're close enough that there could be, you know, and so like that was really good to hear. But you know, it just kind of really stung. It really stung. Because,
so can you, for people who aren't familiar with MMIWUSA, can you talk a little bit about the issues that you help people deal with, why people should be donating their money and their funds to you, and what you are hoping people know about missing and murdered Indigenous women?
Yeah, and like, and the thing is, thank you for letting, you know, me speak to that, because on our page, we don't tell of the good works we do, because I was always raised to, you know, to let your voice speak, you know, and your actions speak, and not, you know, kind of like get all proud and stuff about that, you know. So we don't say a lot. And plus we're protecting the families, like, you know, interests and their confidentiality. So it's like that just would, you know, we just don't do it. But one of the first things that we did start doing was headstones, you know, and then, you know, helping just with the burial itself. But as time went on, you know, we saw so many needs within the family, the MMIW family. You know, we started doing things like paying light bills, getting them food, you know, buying food for the funeral. Just you know, everything that has to do with internment, you know, in a person. And we do that. We also, like, we're a huge chunk of our the money that's donated goes to is actually helping someone escape their the problem that they're in, you know. I think altogether we probably did about 25 to $30,000 worth of just travel, airline miles, you know, and stuff like that. Because we'll get in Alaska, it is like every rescue, it, like everything else in Alaska, it costs about 3 or 4 times what you would pay normally, you know. And then for COVID, that's another thing that we do, you know. And also, like, through the help of MRG, McKenzie River Following, they kind of tapped us out to disperse funds for COVID, you know, within the Northwest. So we've been doing that. We've been doing a lot of sanitizer. We've sent cases and cases of sanitizer to Navajo Nation, to the White Mountain Apache Res, to North and South Dakota tribes, and Washington. You know, we've sent, and Alaska. That's like, I let that. But Alaska, the big thing that we spent money on is food, because the Inuit that lived towards the north had no shipments of food coming in. So it's like that has cost a great deal of money, even like shipping food up there. We were trying to just give the families money and then have them get their own groceries. But right now, a bag of rice that big in Alaska is $25.
Yeah,
You know?
I think one of the things that people, white people in particular, don't recognize is that when we're talking about issues like missing and murdered Indigenous women and issues that affect Indigenous folks, that this isn't just about focusing on one tiny bit of the issue. It's about looking at the community and how do we help community, because that's a very different way of thinking than most white people are trained to think. Lou, is there anything that you can think of that you want to say more about when it comes to people thinking differently about how we address issues that have to do with tribes, with Indigenous issues, with sovereignty, with capitalism? Is there anything that comes to mind as you're listening to us talk?
Yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to the conversations around sovereignty, like understanding that the sovereign tribal nations are just that, they are tribal nations. They're not like just this other community within a state. They have their own nationhood and they have self-governance over their peoples. But there's also a lot of federal oppression that happens because of that as well, such as treaty rights violations, unauthorized land occupation. In regards to MMIW, the lack of follow through and acceptance of the cases that come through on tribal lands because of their jurisdiction over those cases is a huge problem, especially when people are missing. I feel like there's a little bit, I don't know if you agree with this, Deborah, but I feel like there's a little bit more attention in murder cases on tribal lands than disappearances because of the whole, like, well, these stereotypes that they play in, like, oh, so-and-so just likes to party, or some other stereotypes that come into play, or the adults can disappear if they want to without actually like taking things seriously. So those cases I don't feel like are as picked up as much. And so, but they're all related to all these other issues as well. So the systematic way that federal Indian law is constructed makes this violence possible, but it also leads to the other disparities in tribal communities too, like the stuff that we're seeing right now with the water crisis in Warm Springs that we talked about before, And they also have MMIW issues over there as well. So there's just a lot. And I think, like you said, sometimes people like to compartmentalize and say we can only focus on one thing at a time when they're all interconnected. And like even the stuff with the Washington team logo change, like that dehumanization that happens through those logos, like is really important. People don't understand that it is connected to all the other things, because if we're not viewed as like living, breathing people that are worthy of dignity and respect, they're not going to take our other issues seriously. Right. And so there's all these different things to focus on at the same time, and they're all connected. And just reframing how we think about that is really important. And yeah, so I'll pause there.
Yeah, Leah Ann just said lack of correct identity coding.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like in the issue.
Yeah,
that's a huge. Yeah. That is a big deal.
Can you guys explain that? Can y'all explain that a little bit for people who don't understand what that means?
Well, they actually get our race wrong, you know, on a lot of things. There's a lot of people that are biracial, that, you know, that are half white and stuff like that, but they're still members of their nation, you know, and it's like, so they're depicted as white. For instance, now the worst case of anything I ever saw in my life was when I was still living on the Navajo reservation, and one of my friends at that point had been murdered. So I started working with a missing person. Well, it's called Missing in New Mexico. And I was like the Native liaison, and I kept seeing like all these natives on the New Mexico site, some of them obviously Native too, that were pictured white. So when we would talk to the family in the police report that they had first made, yes, they were thing as Native, New Mexico would change it to white. And for a while you had to bring your CDIB. And that's a certified degree of Indian blood, and for them to list you as Native. And because we're paying attention to so many other issues right now. Now, I don't know how that stands in New Mexico right now. And it seems like a little bit of it stopped, you know, but when I first started, that's what was going on. And we had like 5 kids missing, you know, they were from one of the Pueblo reservations. It's kind of escaping me, but like they listed them all as white, you know, and when the parents were like, "Why is this happening?" You know, it's like I don't know, because I knew the police report had said Native, you know, so they asked for it to be changed, and that's what the New Mexico's came back with, is you need to bring your CDIB in, so that we can see that. But we see it all the time, you know, especially like in Washington and Alaska too, and where it's just entered wrong into the system. So what the people who are actually counting these people now are seeing, it's like they have to ask for a change in the race, because they even have to look through the pictures and stuff now. You know,
I think that the thing that you're raising, you know, Leah Ann just said we're the only demographic group that requires CDIB.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that you're raising is that is so important, especially for the Pacific Northwest, is that people look at Oregon and Washington as these very liberal places where everybody is accepted and we all take care of each other and sing Kumbaya. And that is not true. And I think that Lou's like, no. Constantly telling people, you know, I was born and raised in Utah, like, you know, it's like the opposite of Oregon politically, but it's not. And I think it's really important for people to realize that we are still having, when I told my aunt who lives in Utah still, she's 84, you know, I told her I'd gotten on the advisory council for the Native American Longhouse at OSU. And she's like, well, do you have enough blood to be able to do that? Like, are you Native enough? And I was like, And I think that this is a critical piece for people who are not indigenous to understand. This is still a conversation, and how it impacts going after missing women in particular, and that just bias about how we dehumanize indigenous folks is something we have really got to start paying attention to.
Yeah, well, and also the CIA DBs, they are only for federally recognized tribes. So like
Right.
unrecognized tribes, like my tribe's unrecognized because
Right.
of the very complex history of California colonization, is not a federally recognized tribe. And so we don't count when there's those kind of requirements either, and get coded as white or as Hispanic, or if folk are read as being anything, it's always anything except for native. Like that is usually the last thing people think of when they see us. And because of the way we're so invisibilized systematically, and this is part of that systematic erasure in a very damaging way, because like how are people supposed to help find missing people, or when they find people and they're listed as something else and somebody's been looking for them, how do they even get notified about that or even know that that person was found? And it's just absolutely ridiculous. It's one of the things that really bothers me with the way that people look at the numbers and not understanding that the numbers are bad, but they are way worse than anybody even can even imagine because of this data erasure. And I don't know if
I mean, it's just total invisibility completely of
right.
humanity, especially of women.
Yes.
Yeah.
On purpose.
Well, in some, and this is crazy, but like when they're counting too, I mean, it's like the when you actually hear the oral story of this person and you look, they're not even in any database as even assaulted or anything like that. And so, like, you know, when we look through these things, we have to actually take it one case at a time and do the work to get that recognized as a murder. It's just it's crazy. It is absolutely maddening. And Washington, to me, was the biggest offender of all. You know, I'm not kidding you. When we first started, the amount of calls that we got out of Yakima was unbelievable. Unbelievable. People begging for help, you know. And then even after we started and the eyes got turned on to this, you know, and I mean, it even after we do the work, it's like it's still it's just not a good outcome. You know, it's just the worst I'd ever imagined. You know, it's way worse than the Southwest or but Montana and Washington right now. And like and there's you know, there's a million stories that are just alike. You know,
and I think that what I want people who are going to watch this to know is this is not a new issue.
No, it's not.
I mean, this has been going on for literally hundreds of years. Like,
yes.
It's not a new thing, but it's still a very insidious, pervasive, systematic problem that we as white people do not pay attention to. We want to try to, but we don't know how. So I want to move on to talking about what happened in Oklahoma last week. So for those of you that are watching this in real time, in Oklahoma, there was a Supreme Court decision that basically handed sovereignty back to the tribes in Oklahoma. And Deb, I'm going to let you explain this a little bit more, Deb and Lou. But I would like to talk about how this is related to what we've been talking about now and what sovereignty, because most people in the United States don't understand that Indian reservations, as we commonly call them, are actually sovereign nations that are not, they are independent in many, many ways. And we try to make them less independent and less sovereign in many, many ways. So could you talk about the complexity of that a little bit? Either one of you can start, but really talk about the complexity of what Oklahoma really means and what we should know as a community about what sovereign nations are.
Right. So, like I was mentioning a little bit earlier with the sovereign nationhood, part of that is built on treaties, right? That's what built this country, was treaty negotiations and land theft from tribal nations. They were already existing governing systems on this continent before the United States was even thought of, before they even knew that this land existed. And so these nations have existed since, as it's described, since time immemorial, is the common way to describe it, which is very true. And but there are some things, as far as like in the United States in particular, that's what this case is impacting, because there's different ways that treaties impact tribes in Canada, and then they didn't do treaties in Mexico. So the way that those relationships with their governments are way different. But in the context of the United States, those the treaties and some federal court cases basically gave a way that they can negotiate or talk with the government, as well as how crimes are prosecuted on tribal lands. And that's what this case was about. It was a sexual assault case that was challenged as far as jurisdiction. And so for me, it's like really complicated because of how I feel about sexual assault cases. And on the other hand, from a tribal sovereignty legal standpoint, it makes a lot of sense why they challenged it. Because technically the state doesn't have jurisdiction over tribal lands. The federal government does. And so this should have been like a federal case. And so what it did was it opened up this huge amount of Oklahoma to recognize that they are in fact under tribal jurisdiction, and also under federal jurisdiction for certain crimes under the Major Crimes Act. And a lot of people don't understand what that means. And those are like crimes like murder, kidnapping, sexual assault. I don't know all of them by heart right now, sorry. There's quite a few of them. It's all the major ones that like tribes would need to have jurisdiction over that don't. And those are the cases that are often declined at the federal level.
Right.
And so I think what happened in Oklahoma is important for MMIW cases for a couple of reasons. One is now people are going to seriously understand what we're talking about when we say these cases are declined. Because if you can imagine the number of cases, like that means that you don't just go down to the local law enforcement and be like, unless they change something and make some kind of agreements, but you don't go down and say like, I was assaulted or my family member is missing. That gets reported federally. And so hopefully that helps people understand the extent of like how often these cases are declined, and help raise awareness about that and create some larger structural changes in Indian law in the legal system. And so that's what my hope is. And I dropped that article for you to post for folks. For a little bit of background on particularly on the Violence Against Women Act, because that one, if it's ever reauthorized, which I hope it is someday, it's ridiculous it's not. So this is talking about the 2013 one, which also expired, but it helps you get an understanding of like the complications of federal laws on tribal lands is what that article is about, in particular related to murder cases and sexual assault and intimate partner crimes. And so that's like this larger structural thing that when I seen it, I was like, I really hope that this helps shift things for MMIW cases, among other things, in tribal communities nationwide. And some of that is going to be from the impact it has on the general population that are just clueless about this.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you want to, I know you have a lot to say about it too, Deborah, so I'm going to.
No, it's okay. It's all right. What excited us so bad I'm Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Cherokee, and those are all Oklahoma tribes. So like what excited us the most was it went back to the first treaty that was signed when we went, when we were forcefully removed from the Mississippi Basin. And that really gets me because my great uncle and my great grandfather, they all walked the Trail of Tears for real, not, and that's not like a pretending story. I mean, they did for real. And when they got to Oklahoma, my great uncle, Peter Maytubee, he actually was very vocal about what was going on because we got there and we weren't even put together. They absolutely moved us everywhere. So like that treaty that we just saw honored, my tribes have never seen anything in that honored. So it was, it's a big deal. It opens a big door. And I might to throw in here that a lot of the, it is about jurisdictional, who's got the jurisdiction in lands. And like, just for the audience, I know we know this, but it's like those lands that those reservations are on belong to the federal government. The FBI or the Bureau of Indian Affairs is in charge of the law enforcement, but they have no ownership over that particular land. And like they sign individual it's called the land lease, and so that's how it's like $1 a year or something like that, but that's why the FBI is embroiled in everything we do. Right. And we can't step forward, and Oklahoma is an anomaly because of just the way that they did not honor those treaties, and it's like there's parts of Oklahoma where but very few where the FBI and the BIA have jurisdiction because like my tribe bought their own land. Right. As soon as we got and we saw it was BS, the Chickasaw and the Choctaw started buying land. So like we call it a territory, not a not our own nation. It's a territory of Oklahoma, and that's just why it excites me because it actually came the same week as the pipeline was halted. Yeah. So that was like very awesome, and then the week before that, the Washington Supreme Court ruled that Washington tribes, if they're federally recognized, have jurisdiction over their own major crimes. And so that's anything over a misdemeanor. All they were able to prosecute before, even the tribal police, was misdemeanor. Mm-hmm. They had to like go through the feds to get everything. And the federal government, well, like the FBI, they actually use our data. We know for fact in Montana. It's like they are learning. They see we're doing a good job at this. So those of you out there that have supported MMIW or fought for us or anything, marched, anything, what you're doing is working. Because now they're saying, we can solve our own problems. If you're not going to do it, we will do it.
Yeah, so powerful. I think it's really, really, really incredibly powerful. Are there any particular resources or links where people should go to understand this more? I'd hate to send people just out to like, the general news sources. Is there a place where people can go to understand what the decision in Washington and Oklahoma means?
Wasn't there an interview with Sarah Deer, Deborah, on?
Yes, there was. Yes, there was. And we post what people do on our page.
Okay.
But like, you're right. Like one of the things, they're redoing our website, and one of those things is going to talk, they're putting in a place, where people can learn more about this stuff, because we kind of had, well, we have a good website, but it's like, it could be better, and like have one resource for all the stuff that's going on.
I put the link to your website in the comments, so hopefully
Thank
people will
you.
be able to go there and connect. But it would be great to have that interview if we can figure out a way.
Yeah,
to connect
yeah.
to comments. That would be awesome, because I really want people to have a very, and I will try and find the Supreme Court decision for all the super geeky people who really want to dig into the decision. I'll find a link to that from the Supreme Court webpage after we're done. But I think it's a really important thing for people to understand that when you take power away, let's see, Adam says that Robert Miller spoke yesterday on this at the Oregon Historical Society, so I'll try and find that as well. Okay, thanks, Adam. That's awesome. So I'm really, I really think that, I mean, we could talk about this for hours on end, but people just don't have bandwidth for that. If you could, each of you, I would love for you to just take just a minute or two to talk about some very simple things that people can do to understand these very complex issues. I mean, I think the first thing is to stop buying stuff from Facebook ads. That would be a good start. But when you see these things come up, what can people do in order to fight back against the erasure of Indigenous people?
Wow.
Well, I think 30 seconds. Just kidding.
Wow.
We're both like,
there's a whole class on this.
Yeah. There's like even commenting on it. I mean, it's like people don't even realize the power of a share or a comment. Mm-hmm. And that seems really shallow, but Facebook is shallow. In a lot of ways it can be a good thing or bad thing, but yeah, just sharing that. But I say, have the conversation, talk about it, bring it up to somebody and tell them, because that person will eventually probably tell someone else. Mm-hmm. But that, yeah.
Lou?
Yeah, so I found out this most recent round, like I started getting tagged on some of these ads too that other people were seeing.
Yeah,
so is showing that like other people will start doing the same by showing, like, a lot of people think like, oh, I just post things because I want to talk about what I'm up to, but it's actually as examples of what you can do. Like, you can do this too. Like, you can do public commentary at like city council or whatever meetings. You can provide public testimonies. You can do comments. They seem trivial, but it's helping create awareness with other folk. And so I think like sharing that kind of stuff out with your own networks is important. But people started tagging me in some comments, and then people were asking, like, do you know of sites, before they would delete these comments, do you know of sites that I can actually get some real merchandise from to support our own people? And so I was dropping the MMIW page. I was dropping like other native clothing brand, because they were asking for general clothes too. And I'm like, I hope you see this before they delete my comment. And a lot of it. And so that was exciting that they actually got to see it, right? And so and they thanked me for that. So I think just doing little stuff like that is helpful, is helping spread the word of where to get stuff.
Yeah.
And also, we didn't really talk about it, but I really wanted to bring up, like, to also have conversations if you have family members or know of community members that are also exploiting within our own Indigenous communities that are exploiting MMIW as well. It's really sad for me to see that happening. So it's not just the Facebook ads, it's happening like people selling merch and just keeping the money. And I understand people have lives to support, but just a reminder that that is also exploitation. And as Deborah was talking, I think people forget and get lost in the numbers and get lost in the hashtag and forget that these are actually really people's lives. People's lives are changed forever. If you've ever had somebody taken from you through violence or had to search for somebody you love that's missing, it changes your life forever. And I'm really thankful for Deborah's team for all the work that they do on the ground. And people don't realize all that behind the scenes stuff that goes into it. And they forget, like I said, that these are real people. These are actual lives we're talking about. They're not just like some imaginary thing. And that exploiting it is not cool at all at any level, whether it's the Facebook ads, overseas companies, our own people. It's got to stop. And so do your research, find out where the money's going. Is should be the first question you ask before you buy something about it.
Yeah, someone just said, yes, it's not a trend. I think that's just such a critically important thing to point out.
Yes. And that's what we've seen. And that is what just like, you know, it's like they'll have these big awareness events and like all MMIW stuff, you know, like all wearing the skirts and doing the red and all that. And then once the event's over, they're silent. You know, and like when they can't be seen, they're silent. You know, and that is what like it really used to get to me, you know, and now that we've been doing it for 5 years, I see those people like fall off the map for one reason or the other. And most of the time it's because people figure out, you know, what their motives are behind it. But like this merchandising of MMIW by our own people is like Lou said, it's like it hurts. It's like, why would you do that? Like that, do you realize that family sees that? You know, you're like, oh, have MMIW earrings, blah, 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 you know, and that family is the one who really matters. And that woman, they're the ones that matter. And you're just like making a bunch of red dresses and still selling them. I do want to say that Indigenous Intentions and Crafts for Justice, and there are a few other ones that have it in their PayPal or their money app to automatically give us 10%. And believe me, when we can prove it, that we operate off of grants, but our donations go to the community. And if you like say, we do this with our people who sell, sell the merch, the earrings and those kinds of things, is we tell them who they're helping silently. I mean, in the inbox, this is what happened with what you did. And oh my gosh, it means so much to those people who did do it, you know.
Deb, it would be really great to get those particular pieces in the comments here so people know who to shop from.
Oh, okay.
So if we can link those.
I might have to do it afterwards.
No, do it after for sure.
Okay, yeah, okay.
But know that, I mean, like, just a couple of people are commenting, this isn't a social club and you don't know your family missing. And without MMIW USA, too many folks would not be found. And that's the key here, is to make sure that we're supporting efforts that go to helping these families who are, dealing with such horrible grief. So a couple of people have asked, someone put Indigenous Intentions. What's the other one you mentioned, Deb?
Crafts for Justice.
Crafts for Justice. Okay.
Yeah, they sell a lot of things. I always get like a little tag, or a little message up every time something happens.
It would be really great to connect those resources too, because I think people will really want to shop and put their money where.
Yeah, because you know what? It's like, if you just look at the Loring's with Ashley Loring, Heavy Runner, how much, that money it's cost to continue these searches, that's who you want to help. That's who we should be helping. The first 3 months they were up there searching, they didn't have enough money for food. They went all the way on that mountain and only had enough to get there in gas. At that time was before we became a 501c3. you know, but now it's like we bought a drone to go up there and look. We're just waiting for that reservation to open up. We got like people coming from Wisconsin, people, because we want to find her. It's not about like red dresses and events and things like that. It's about these people. Kimberly Loring has done over 200 searches on her own. And the Bureau of Indian Affairs didn't even go in on her case until she'd been gone 9 months. And then there was evidence loss, and Kimberly found her sister's sweater with blood and oil on it. And I mean, can you even imagine like picking that up and holding that? You know, those are the people you want to help. That person beating is kind of like a conduit for, you know, they're between, and those people should realize that's who you're ripping off.
Yeah.
Not me, not our advocates, the people.
Yeah. Yeah. So lots of people are asking where they can donate and where they can give directly. So you might want to expect some magic to happen. And thank you for bringing the point home, because I think that is just really so important.
It is.
This is not a fashion trend. It is not fancy makeup. It is not any of these things. These are people's lives, and raising this awareness is so important. And so I want to thank you both so much for being here with me and for giving me the opportunity to share this message and talk to people about this, because I think that it is such an important thing for us to be talking about as we move forward as people and as states and as nations. I think that it's really important for us.
And may I add that if you want to hear more, if you want to continue the discussion, let's do it. You know, and you guys that are viewing, let us know. Let us know what you'd like us to do, because we keep on going. You know, let's make this a conversation that lasts.
Yeah. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Have a great
thank you.
Tight for just a second. I would really love it for all of you that are watching. After you watch this, I would love for you to share this so that we can spread the word and get out more information about what's happening, and we can start changing the way we operate in the world. So thank you so much for being here, and make sure you share this video. Thanks.